Hello and welcome to Byju's IAS. Let's get started and look into the first article. The first article says outreach and overreach. The second wave of COVID-19 has increasing number of cases which is resulting in want of the oxygen. There are deaths that has occurred because of lack of oxygen that is supplied to the hospitals, and many people have passed away because oxygen was not delivered on time. The executive has taken the steps as well, but in spite of the steps taken by the executive, in spite of the steps taken by the NGOs and other private individuals, this has resulted in lack of oxygen in number of states in India, which is why the Supreme Court of India has taken one of the initiatives where it has formed a 12-member national task force for what? To ensure medical oxygen is delivered throughout the country, and this particular process of providing oxygen to the states happened on a streamlined process. So basically, because we have had issues in giving oxygen on time to the states as per their requirements, the Supreme Court here has appointed a national task force so that oxygen demand can be met, recommendations can be made by this national task force. Let us try and understand what are the objectives of this national task force. Basically, the national task force will include all the top experts from the field of health and also doctors both from the public as well as the private. So what will it have? It will have the doctors and health experts so that they can advise the judiciary, they can advise the executive so that ad hoc measures are done away with, and what we have is a structured approach to meet the demands of the oxygen. What will they do? They would basically conduct an oxygen audit. They will try and understand how many allocations of the oxygen cylinders are happening to a particular state, what is the demand in each state, where are we going wrong when it comes to the oxygen allocation. So an oxygen audit will be conducted by this national task force, and eventually they would formulate a scientific study, ensure that scientific allocation of oxygen happens to all the states in India and the union territories. So what will they do? They will understand the issues of oxygen allocation and come up with a scientific approach to allocate oxygen on the basis of scientific evidence and proofs. Basically, this will be one of the initiatives taken by the Supreme Court, which will be monitored by the Supreme Court in India. Apart from the oxygen audit, apart from allocating oxygen to the states and unitaries, what else will they do? Basically, when you look into this particular pandemic, there are issues with respect to drugs as well, one with the medicines as well. Let's say for example remdesivir. So this particular national task force will review the availability of all the drugs and medicines and also plan for any type of exigency as well, in case there is an emergency, and that emergency will require monitoring. That will also be taken up by this national task force. They will also review the technology parameters and see if any improvements can be done in source of the technology. As of now, we have n number of applications. If similar applications can be developed for the drugs as well as for the oxygen, that will also be reviewed by this national task force. The National Task Force would also offer suggestions to the Government of India. One is in reference to the medical staff. As of now, what we are seeing is a crunch of resources when it comes to the medical teams as well. So how effectively they have to be used, what should be the insurance mechanisms and programs, and how they have to ensure that there is effective usage of other manpower in this particular situation is what is the recommendation that will be given by the National Task Force. Followed by this, in case we require any research, such recommendations will also be developed by this particular national task force, and all the best practices from in and around the world will be taken up and the same will be suggested by this task force. So basically, it will work on all these important parameters and ultimately it will be delivered to the judiciary, and this will be delivered to the government so that we do not have an ad hoc procedure, but instead we have a structured approach to fighting the menace of COVID-19 and also address the root cause of policy issues and administration when it comes to the governance. So this particular model will have the task force which which will consist of doctors, and the convener of this particular task force will be the cabinet secretary. So the secretary to the health ministry will also be part of this national task force. So this national task force as a whole is a judicially empowered group. Basically, it will handle all the health crisis that has emanated because of the COVID-19 pandemic. Now the question is, how is the present system of allocation? Currently, we have the central government which is allocating oxygen on the basis of requirements made by the state governments. In case the state governments are making any requirements, an allocation is made by the central government. In case of any differences between the state government and the central government, and if they have approached the High Court or the Supreme Court, and if an order has been passed by the judiciary, has to meet these directions. That is how the present system is working. So basically it is an ad hoc process. So the National Task Force will ensure that this process is completely eliminated, and what we will have is a prescribed model for the allocation of that particular state's demand. Now what the author points out is an important question. Is it the judicial overreach by establishing the National Task Force? What is this judicial overreach? Let's say, for example, when it comes to any organs of the state, we have what is called as the legislature, then we have executive, and finally what we have is judiciary. There is clear cut separation of powers when it comes to these three organs of the state. So what they have to do is to keep a check on each other, but they also have to ensure that they do not penetrate into the actions of the other part. So the legislature will have to make the laws, and when it comes to the executive, they have to implement the laws. When it comes to judiciary, they have to interpret the laws. So what we basically have is that these three organs have their own functions. Now, with respect to judicial overreach, if the judiciary is entering the domain of the executive, or it is entering the domain of the legislature, it is snatching away certain powers which is not given to the judiciary. That is what is called as judiciary. So judiciary in the process of judicial overreach starts interfering with the work of the executive or with the work of the legislature. That is what is called as judicial overreach. So the author here points out, by bringing this National Task Force, has the judiciary entered the domain of the executive and has it overreached its powers? Asks the author. First, let us look at arguments which says yes, it has gone through the overreach, and then look at the arguments which says no, it is not overreach. These are the principles of guarding the constitution. First up, let's understand some of the arguments which says yes, judiciary has overreached its powers. What are the arguments given by the author? When it comes to the allocation of the oxygen, or let's say what amount of oxygen has to be given to a particular state, is the executive role that has to be performed by the executive, which is the central government. And how much should go to each state, how much should go within that particular state, to which district, which region, all these data will be collected by the executive. So only on the basis of data and statistics, where they have huge machinery to work for the government, they would be in a much better position for the allocation. So what we have, this is an executive role. What we have is manpower which is under the control of the executive. Because they have the data and statistics, ultimately it is the executive which have the prerogative, which have the role, which have the power to allocate the oxygen. So the judiciary, by entering this particular domain, has entered the executive role, stepped into the shoes of executive. Thereby it means judicial overreach is one part of the argument. There is another part of the argument that says no, this is not judicial overreach. Why? We know from the principles of the constitution, who is the guardian of the constitution? It has to be the judiciary. Who takes care of the fundamental rights? It is the judiciary. One, the Supreme Court, then we also have the High Court. When we look at fundamental rights, one of the important fundamental right that we have is Article 21. Article 21 speaks about right to life. When oxygen is not supplied to the people, where the onus or the responsibility is on the executive, they were not able to keep up to the promise of maintaining and sustaining and allocating the oxygen, which means because they were not able to give oxygen on time, supply oxygen on life, number of people have kicked the bucket and they have passed away, which means right to life is violated, article 21 is violated, which is why the Supreme Court has entered into this particular phase. So the Supreme Court in this particular case has issued some of the orders under article 32. Similarly, we have the High Court which have issued order under 226. So because there is violation of the fundamental rights as enshrined under 21, which is why the Supreme Court and the High Court have used their extraordinary power and have set up this particular process. Had the executive taken up its responsibility, worked according to the principles of the Constitution, the Supreme Court would not have entered. But since they had an ad hoc process, which meant that people have lost their lives, which is why the judiciary has entered into this particular domain. Basically, last year we had n number of public interest litigations which were filed in the Supreme Court of India. The Supreme Court also drew criticism because it was not able to ask the government as well, and now when the Supreme Court is asking the government, it is not wrong, says the author. So basically, this is the right step taken by the Supreme Court of India. It is not usurping upon the powers of the executive, but instead they want a structure so that they can save the lives of the people. So what it is currently establishing is judicial governance, governance which has to be followed and ultimately fulfilling its constitutional duty to do justice to the people of India. So basically, this is not judicial overreach, says the author. Now, the question that you have to answer on the comment section is, what are the previous instances, or you can also quote the case laws where judiciary has overreached its power, what we call as judicial overreach. Put in some of the landmark judgments with respect to judicial overreach on the comment section. So this is what we have to understand in reference to this article. Now let's look into the next article. This article says a TRIPS waiver is useful but not a magic pill. This article has been explained day before yesterday. We have been discussing about this particular issue of TRIPS waiver in the past 1 week as well. But here what we are speaking is about, apart from the TRIPS waivers, there are other challenges which are non-IP based. Let's try and understand what is the author trying to convey. We have discussed in the past as well that South Africa and India did seek the World Trade Organization for the TRIPS waiver. For what? One for the drugs, the other for the vaccines and all types of manufacturing when it comes to addressing the issues of the menace of the COVID-19. And recently we have got the boost because United States of America has also given consent to it. So basically, United States of America has given the TRIPS waiver can be initiated, especially with respect to the vaccines. So what we have is a boost from United States of America. All this has been explained in our day before yesterday CNA. So in case you don't know the background, kindly look into the background of day before yesterday CNA and come back to today's video. But in spite of this proposal made by United States of America, we have other issues which will block the access to the vaccines as well as other drugs, says the author. What are these other issues? Yes, we have the United States of America which has considered this particular proposal and has accepted this particular proposal. But there are other countries as well. Let's say United States of America is very dear from Canada and richer countries in European Union who have also opposed this particular proposal of granting the TRIPS waiver. So while United States of America has accepted, the Western countries like Canada and richer countries in European Union have completely obstructed to the TRIPS waiver. Added to this, when we speak about political will, we also have political parties as well when it comes to a particular country. Yes, the President of United States of America may have given consent to this particular TRIPS waiver as well. But there are opposition political parties as well who also have a mandate in United States of America. There are n number of Republicans who are also opposing this particular move. In fact, there are other people who have a strong hold in political parties who are supporting giant pharmaceutical corporations. So what we currently have, yes, the president may have approved it, but you have opposition political parties, in fact people from the same political party who might have been supporting the giant pharmaceutical corporations because there is a strong lobbying when it comes to United States of America's pharmaceutical companies. So these are the major issues when it comes to United States of America. Now let's take some of the examples that has happened in the past. When we go back to the 1990s, one of the major diseases or virus that was spreading across the world is the HIV/AIDS. So there were medicines that were supposed to be coming up and there were vaccines that were supposed to be coming up, but this was only restricted to the developed countries. But after 2003, the world came up together. They wanted to ensure that TRIPS waiver is considered for the HIV/AIDS, which is why the World Trade Organization adopted a decision in the year 2003 for the TRIPS waiver when it comes to the HIV/AIDS. So what did they do? They had one of the articles called as Article 31F of the TRIPS agreement, which ensured that compulsory licensing was predominantly for the domestic market of that particular country was waived. So what do? They immediately come up with an approach so that this whole TRIPS waiver that is present in the World Trade Organization is completely done away with. But in spite of this doing away, there were some issues with respect to the HIV/AIDS vaccine. What are these issues? The waiver was subject to some strict requirements such as drugs so manufactured are to be exported to that nation only. Let's say if that particular drug or the vaccine is manufactured, this was supposed to have sent to only a specific country where it is being given permission. Let's say we have one or two African countries where there are increasing cases of HIV/AIDS. So if permission is being granted for one specific country, other countries would not be able to get this particular drug. So it was country specific and that became a major hurdle. The medicines should be easily identifiable through different color or shape. That is because they wanted to ensure that this particular drug is not used by that particular country at the domestic level so that it can again be used for the profiteering. So what they did is to provide a different color and shape to that particular drug. Only the amount necessary to meet the requirements of the importing country are to be manufactured. Let's say the population of one of the countries in Africa is about 10 crores. So only about what will be the number of people who will be suffering from that particular virus, only those many had to be exported to that particular country. Anything excess were not allowed, and at the same time the importing country had to notify the World Trade Organization TRIPS Council that they have received as well. So all this meant that there was undue delay when it comes to executing this particular program. Why? Because when you look at the World Trade Organization, most of it or the negotiations of the World Trade Organization is on the basis of consensus. That is how they would be able to make the decision. But because of all these parameters that were set, there were undue delay. In fact, countries became hesitant to take up this particular program because of undue delay caused by this procedural delays. Added to this, when you look at the statement of United States of America, they have said that they will be waiving intellectual property protections only on the COVID-19 vaccines. But apart from the vaccines, we would also have other medicines as well, other drugs as well, other technologies as well, and other adjunct therapies as well, which is not being met by the United States of America. So they have restricted only to the vaccines, but it might not be able to meet the demands of drugs or other medicines or the adjunct therapies that which is required for minimizing the impact of the COVID-19. Added to all these issues is that companies may not transfer the technology that which is required for the manufacturing of the vaccine, which is where the author says that countries have the option of using the coercive mechanism, but if they use the coercive mechanism, the country where that company currently hosts, the country where the multinational company is headquartered, may put pressure on the home country, which may not work. So coercion will not work, says the author. So what we require is that particular country requesting and entering into negotiation, cajoling the pharmaceutical company so that they can transfer the technology, is one of the recommendations given by the author. Added to this, it is not only the international TRIPS agreement, there are other domestic laws which may also hinder the progress of intellectual property. So what is the author suggesting? The author is suggesting the national government, which is the Indian government or any other government, to ensure that lawyers who are very good experts of intellectual property are taken up. A committee is appointed. They understand what are the intricacies of the TRIPS as well as Indian laws or any other country's law, and ensure that there is compatibility with the TRIPS waiver as well as the domestic laws. So what should they basically do? They should introduce certain changes when it comes to the Indian legal framework, suggests the author. So the author here suggests that these recommendations will have to be fulfilled, and apart from that, the non-IP bottlenecks like technology transfer, production constraint, logistical challenges, inadequacy of supply chains, and unavailability of raw materials will all have to be met. So added to the TRIPS waiver, these issues will have to be considered, will have to be changed, says the author. It is this that we have to understand in reference to this article. Now let's look into the next article. This article says back in the shortage economy. The article here draws a comparison of India during the agricultural crisis that we witnessed during the 1960s and draws a comparison to the present situation of the pandemic. So the article draws a comparison and brings a solution or the way forward as to how we would be able to fight the menace of the pandemic by drawing historical lessons from the agricultural crisis. First up, let's look into what the author is trying to speak in reference to the agricultural crisis. Back in the 1960s, what we had is the agricultural crisis. Especially, we were hit by the droughts in the year 1965, and consecutively, we also had an additional drought in the year 1966 as well. So what we had was a double drought in 1965 as well as in 1966. Because of these droughts, what we saw was a drop when it comes to the agricultural productivity. So the productivity of agriculture considerably dropped. So this was the major hit to the Indian economy, and as a result, what we actually witness is food insecurity. Why food insecurity? Because there was severe shortage of the food. India had to depend on the foreign charity. India had to seek the assistance of United States of America and multiple other countries as well. So during the 1960s, we had the drought, we had the agricultural crisis, we had the shortage of food, we had food insecurity where we had to depend on the foreign supply, and we depended on United States of America on the first part. This is where after all these crises started surfacing, we had the political will during that particular period. What are we speaking about? We had greater issues during that period. As a result, we had the political will where the political masters took a decision. For what? They wanted to boost the productivity of agriculture, which is where they came up with a policy called as the Green Revolution. So the political will gave greater powers, one, to the bureaucracy and also to the scientific community as well. So because they were able to give the powers to the bureaucrats as well as to the scientific community, they went about understanding this whole process of agricultural crisis, and they came up with what is called as the Green Revolution. With the implementation of the Green Revolution, our food availability increased, we ended the import dependence, and ultimately the yield of the agriculture increased. what we were able to do is increase the productivity and production over a period of time. So we were in a crisis and we were able to overcome because we had the political will, and the political masters were able to see what could happen if more powers were given to the bureaucracy as well as to the scientific community. Now let's bring it to the current pandemic. What is happening? As we had the agricultural crisis in the 1960, in the 2020, what we have is the pandemic. What we have is the COVID-19. What are the issues that we are facing? Back then, we had issues of productivity when it comes to the food insecurity, and now we have issues with respect to the hospital beds, drugs, ventilators, and above all, one of the basic oxygen cylinders, that which is in greater need in the present situation. So what is happening? Back then we asked for the foreign assistance, international help. In the present situation, we are seeking the international help once again. Countries like United States of America, United Kingdom, many other countries are helping India, and at the same time countries like China are also asking India if they require any help. So what are the lessons that we can draw from the 60s and engage the same in the present situation is what is this article all about. When we go back to the 1960s, India did not have the establishment of what is called as the industries. We were comparatively weaker when it comes to the industries, but now what we have is an advancement when it comes to the industries. We have every type of industries. So in the present situation, we have an add-on with the establishment of industries. Added to this, when it comes to the historical 1960s, what we have as a major problem is the foreign exchange. We do not have the foreign exchange much, but in the present situation, we also have enough numbers, enough foreign exchange in our coffers as well. So the problem in 1960s is currently overcome. How? We have the industries that is established, and at the same time we have enough foreign exchange in our kitty as well. So in the present situation, what we require is the political will, says the author. Why? That is because when we speak about vaccines, we have been saying that we do not have enough vaccines over a period of time, but ideally what the author says is that more vaccine producing industries or pharmaceutical companies should be given the license to manufacture it. More industries should be given the permission to manufacture or produce oxygen, and at the same time, if vaccine is the need of the hour, the government will have to spend on it and ensure, even if it is at the cost of importing the vaccine, the same has to be done by the government so that all these issues are completely eliminated, says the author. So it is the responsibility of the government to buy the vaccines from outside, vaccinate the people, and not justify the unavailability of the vaccines, says the author. Added to this, in the year 2020, the COVID-19 came. What we had is issues with respect to the infrastructure. So what we actually did is we enforced the lockdown. What did this lockdown basically help? The lockdown basically helped in two parameters. One, we did not have the enough health infrastructure, so we wanted to develop health infrastructure during that particular lockdown, and at the same time we also wanted to slow down the spread of the virus. Yes, we were able to slow down the spread of the virus in the initial phases, but the infrastructure which we were supposed to develop was not developed during that particular period. So what the author says, back in the years of 1960, we did not have enough agricultural infrastructure. Now we do not have the health infrastructure. Going forward, the political masters, political parties and leaders will have to ensure enough money is spent on the health so that we have the health related infrastructure going forward. As of now, we have issues, but taking the lessons from the past, we have to ensure that we invest more on the health infrastructure, says the author. So it is not about just plain numbers when it comes to the budget, but what we require is outcomes in the form of right infrastructure, and a certain percentage of the state GDP will also have to be spent on the health infrastructure, says the author. Added to this, when we have any lockdowns or COVID-19 issues as it happened in the year 2020, what we also fed was the food insecurity. Why food insecurity? That is because when there are lockdowns that happen, there'll be issues with respect to the logistics as well, which can also result in inflation as well, and ultimately this has to be borne by the consumers. So in order to overcome this particular issue, because there are number of states which are enforcing the lockdowns like Delhi or the state of Odisha or the state of Maharashtra or the state of Karnataka, which are enforcing lockdowns similarly, in the present situation we may see the reflection of the food insecurity. So going forward, the government's responsibility is to anticipate the disruption in the food security market and ensure that the supply chain is intact, we do not have any logistical issues, and inflation does not surface. So going forward, what we require is a multi-stakeholder approach where you require the government, the farming community, the multiple stakeholders of the private and the people themselves, so that we can fight the menace of pandemic, taking the lessons from the past and also ensuring that in the near future we do not have any health lacuna issues because of the infrastructural flaws. It is this that we have to understand in reference to this article. Now let's look into the next article. This article says Green Panel allows Great Nicobar plan to advance. This article here is speaking about the proposal made by Niti Aayog with respect to ambitious project for the Great Nicobar Island. What is this project all about? What was the proposal of Niti Aayog has been explained on 21st of March 2021 under the first topic, Niti Aayog vision for Great Nicobar ignores tribal ecological concerns. So kindly look into it. So please ensure that you look into this particular video to understand what is being discussed in this article. So that article that we have already discussed speaks about the leatherback turtle. We have also discussed about the Galathea Bay. We have also discussed what is the proposal made by the Niti Aayog and how it will be a major problem to the environment. Everything has been explained on this video. But one of the pointers that we have not discussed is in reference to what is called as the Parivesh portal. The Parivesh portal can be very important from your preliminary examination point of view. What is this Parivesh portal? Parivesh is a web-based, role-based workflow application that has been developed for online submission and monitoring of the proposals submitted by the proponents of seeking environment, forest, wildlife and CRA clearances from central, state and district level authorities. Let's say for example, there is one of the organizations or an industry or a company. It wants to start off with its company process. So this may require, if it is operating in one of the environmental places which will require clearances, this usually was involved with a lot of red tape. It took undue delay as well because there was a lot of processing, there was a lot of committees that it had to look at. In order to overcome all these issues, in case there is a company which requires the permission from the government on a faster basis, all that they have to do is post their proposal on this Parivesh portal. So this is in line with the Digital India initiative that was initiated by Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Basically, this speaks about minimum government and maximum governance. So what is the significance of this? This will help in changing all the issues that we currently have. What are the issues? One is the undue delay, next bureaucratic red tape, and at the same time there was a lot of time that was being taken for scrutinizing what is their proposal all about. All this will be completely eliminated and what we will have is a single window clearance. So all that they have to do is to single registration, single sign on all types of clearances. They'll be given a unique ID for the clearances required for a particular project, and this will have a single window interface for the proponent to submit applications for getting the clearances. So basically this will help in advancing the ease of doing business, and at the same time companies will want to engage more with the government as well. So what are the significance of this particular portal? They will receive the automatic alerts as well. Let's say a proposal is made and they have to see what is the progress of their proposal. So automatic alerts will be given, one via the SMS as well as the emails. Let's say in that particular process there is issue with respect to the application. The same will be intimated by the concerned authorities on the SMS as well as the emails. This Parivesh portal will allow the organization to track and interact with the scrutiny officers, generate online clearance letters, online mailers and alerts to state functionaries in case of any delay beyond a stipulated time for processing of applications. So this means they can engage with the officers to prevent any undue delay in processing of their applications. So what is this Parivesh? Parivesh here stands for proactive and response facilitation by interactive, virtuous and environmental single window hub. It is this that we have to understand in reference to the Parivesh portal. But for the rest of the analysis, do look into our 21st March 2021 video. Now let's look into the next article. This article here is speaking about Haki Pakki tribes. From the preliminary examination point of view, do remember it is one of the major tribal groups that which is present in the state of Karnataka. So the Haki Pakki are the tribal groups who are present in the state of Karnataka. Haki here stands for bird and Pakki here stands for catching of the bird. So this particular Haki Pakki means bird catchers in Kannada. They also have the language of their own which is called as Haki Pakki, and this has been listed as one of the endangered languages. So kindly remember, this has been declared as one of the endangered languages by UNESCO. This can also be important from the preliminary examination point of view. Now let's look into the mains practice questions. Has the judiciary usurped the powers of the executive by constituting the 12-member National Task Force to ensure oxygen supply? Examine. Next question. TRIPS waiver is not a magical pill as there are non-IP challenges in making vaccines and drugs accessible to the world population. Illustrate with relevant examples. So please write all your answers on the comment section. Peer review, give positive feedback to your friends' answers. So this is it for today. Thank you for watching. All the best.